more, and I don't know why that's wrong, and it doesn't do it, and oh my gosh. Okay. So they're very important to you. And we are going to go through this PowerPoint quickly. I'm actually going to take the time to lecture. I'm sorry for you guys. And then you'll watch the crash course video on your own and take detailed notes so that you have everything you need to be successful on your joints and articulation quiz. Joints does happen to be chapter 9 in the same book that I follow along in, which if you ever wanted to know is Principles of Anatomy and Physiology, 13th edition, Tortora and Dickinson. So maybe I'll post that on your website just so you can see what I'm looking at. Joints are classified 2 different ways, plus 3 different ways, plus 4 other different ways. There's lots of ways to name a joint depending on what the joint is. But you got the anatomy of it, structural, and the physiology of it, or the functional classification. You're going to know the classic structure of a typical synovial joint, which is all the joints that allow for flexion and extension. So your elbows and your knees and your ball and socket and your hip joints, all that. Types of synovial joints and terms for descriptions of movements, which for Lab Practical 2, which actually is posted for y'all to do. I guess I should go ahead and mention that. Lab Practical 2 is open for you guys until the 17th. There is one term on there that you might not remember, but if you could, if I'm in anatomical position, you know, thumbs out, and my palms are facing up, what is this position called?
Supination.
Very good, Thomas. Gold star for you. Remember, I'm holding a bowl of soup. This is supination. I just didn't want that question to trip you up on your lab practical because it's in there. But supination is when your hands are up like that. Oh my God, chair, what is going on? There we go. I'm successful. Okay. I feel like I'm supposed to have something in front of me for you guys, but I guess I'm not. It's just all my stacks of paper. Okay. There we go. Joints are any place where 2 bones come together. That is the definition of a joint. Your general function of joints are they hold the skeleton together. So your joints can be cartilaginous. Well, they are cartilaginous, and they can be either fibrocartilage or hyaline cartilage. And so that holds the joints together along with tendons and ligaments. The purpose of joints is to allow for increased mobility and flexibility of the skeleton. Please remember that the skeleton doesn't move. My skeleton is not what is, oh, you can't see me. That's Thomas. My skeleton is not, it's not what's doing this. What is making this motion happen?
Joints.
And how are joints making that motion happen?
Aren't your muscles contracting?
So that means what is happening to my bones?
They're being dragged along for the ride.
Kind of, yes. The muscles are contracting, and so they are either pulling or pushing the bone. And the only reason my bones can pull or push is because right here I have a synovial joint that allows for that movement. But the skeleton itself doesn't move. Joints can be classified based on what kind of movement they allow or what material is found. You are required to know each of these categories. I didn't write that, but I believe that. That is something that you are required to know. The fun begins. You have synarthroses. These are joints that have no movement. Tell me, where in your body is a synarthroses?
Do you want us to read off the slide, or you want us to give us another example?
I wanted you to come it up on your own, but go ahead and read off the slide.
I'll try to think of another one.
There is one more actually, but okay. I didn't realize they were written there. That's my bad. I'm being distracted by the rest over here doing I don't know what.
Your ribs?
No, not the ribs, sorry. So the sutures of the skull You know, they don't move once they're sutured together, which happens not at birth, but a couple of years later fully. And your teeth in their sockets, those are not supposed to have movements. If your tooth is moving in your socket, something's wrong there. And those are called gomphosis. Those are synarthroses, or joints with no movement. So look, synarthroses is a type of joint, but then so is a gomphosis. So there's multiple terms in this PowerPoint that are different, and that's really the big thing. Like, you have a lot of matching questions in your quiz, and one of them, one of them is 18 words long. You got a lot to learn. Then you have amphiarthroses, which are partially movable joints. Now, your intervertebral disc, there's not a lot of movement there, but there is enough. We have flexibility. We can bend our spine, or we can push it in and do the backward thing. You have some flexibility there, so there is some movement. Your pelvis is joined together both by fusing to the sacrum, but in the front, it has that very small piece of fibrocartilage called the pubic symphysis that actually has a little bit of movement to it, which is essential in giving birth, and well, mostly just for that. But it does have some movement. So that's an amphiarthrosis. And then you have your freely moving joints, which are diarthroses. Pretend like I'm a marionette and I'm connected to everything, and everything that lets me freely move around is a diarthrosis. It's the most common type of joint in the human body. Knees, fingers, toes, ankles, wrists. Everybody clap your hands. No, okay, So taking those words, synarthrosis, amphiarthrosis, and diarthrosis, which you do need to know, then we can talk about the types of joints they are. You have fibrous joints, which is made out of fibrocartilage. These are adjacent bones that are joined by collagen fibers. You have three kinds. You have those sutures in the brain, in the skull. You have gomphosis in the teeth, good Lord. And then you have syndesmosis, which if I was a good teacher, I would tell you what that means. Why don't you figure that out on your own? Y'all are college level people. Then you have the amphiarthrosis. These are cartilaginous joints, so hyaline cartilage, synchondrosis and symphysis. Whoa, words. Synchondrosis and symphysis. You know what? In a few slides, we have pictures of each of these. That's why. And then synovial joints are your shoulders and elbows and knees and your hip joint and your phalanges and your wrist, being able to make that gliding. Oh, you can't see me again. Being able to make the gliding motion with your wrist. Okay, the opposition abilities that we have with the thumb due to this saddle joint right here as a freely movable joint, giving us the ability to do these things because our thumb is opposable. The diarthroses, or the synovial joints, are the most common joint in the body. There is a trade-off for mobility and stability, and I have told you this multiple times already, but the more mobile a joint is, the ball and socket joint of our shoulder being the most mobile joint in the human body, the least stable it is. It's a trade-off. This gives me the most movement that I could possibly have, but it's also easily damaged and dislocated. Hip is slightly less mobile, more stable. Elbow is slightly less mobile, more stable. You get to the pubic symphysis and your intervertebral discs, or your amphiarthroses, talking about quite a bit of stability there. And then those sutures and those gomphosis are not supposed to be movable. They're immovable joints. So you have a trade-off between stability and motility. Okay, so our synarthroses, once again, gomphosis, you have a whole bunch of ligaments, I don't know if you know this, holding your teeth down in the socket so that the tooth doesn't move. That's a gomphosis. You got those sutures in your brain, not your brain, sorry, your skull. This is an immovable joint, we call them a suture. And then that syndesmosis, the one I couldn't come up with, this is a whole bunch of cartilage in between the, what am I looking at? Tibia and fibula, it looks like. No, that's the radius and ulna. I'm crazy. The radius and ulna. These don't, the area between the bones doesn't move. The radius and ulna are always going to be this difference apart, this distance apart. And it's full of this fibrous interosseous membrane. And so that's a syndesmosis. So synarthrosis, which is a fibrous joint, can be broken down into 3 different words. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes, Miss Moore, you're amazing. Oh, thank you so much. You don't have to be there. Okay, all right. And then we have your amphiarthrosis, which is your synchondrosis. This is your epiphyseal plate. Remember we talked about your, thank you, Nia. Remember we talked about your growing as a human, and the reason we grow taller and longer is because we add on bone at this epiphyseal plate. And eventually when you stop growing, this hardens and calcifies and you just have an epiphyseal line when you're done growing. Cool, you remember all that? Excellent. But this area is a synchondrosis. It contains hyaline cartilage, and this is the ribs here, Thomas. I think you said ribs before for something else. These have slight movement. Whoa. As well as the symphysis of the pubic bone and the intervertebral discs. So amphiarthrosis, which are cartilaginous joints, can be broken down into synchondrosis and symphysis. Once again, for your quiz, it's important that you know all of these terms. Synovial joints, freely moving, knee joint, elbow joint, shoulder and hip joints, and the phalanges of the hands and feet, and etc. They don't even tell you all of them, right? This is a type of joint that is defined by the presence of a cavity filled with fluid. Synovial fluid being the most slippery substance, man-made substance on this planet. Most joints of the body fall into this class for the 3rd time. We're saying that again. Structures in a synovial joint are these: articular capsule, joint synovial cavity, articular cartilage, synovial fluid, ligaments, nerves, and vessels. I'm not going to insult your intelligence by reading you the definitions. Here's what it looks like. Your articular capsule here, which one am I looking at? Both things. So you have a couple of layers here. You have a fibrous joint capsule and a synovial membrane that encapsulates the whole fluid-filled area. So this is a, whoa, thought I saw a hand raise. That was weird. What is this? That's patellar ligament. That's just ligament. This is a joint cavity. We'll just go there. Then you have the joint cavity that's full of synovial fluid. You have auricular cartilage. By the way, if you don't know, if we didn't discuss it on the skeleton, articular cartilage, sorry, is what covers the very, very ends of the bones. We called it hyaline cartilage, which it is, but it's also known as articular cartilage. And then you have ligaments, right? I'm going to say this is the arm here because there's a lot of, well, they're not even showing those. Never mind. It might be the knee. This is definitely the knee because it's showing us the patella here. Here's your articular cartilage again, fibrous fibrocartilage sheath, and then synovial membrane, joint filled with synovial cavity here. The knee also has a bursa, which is not, let me get here, bursa, which is a fibrous sac lined with synovial membrane and containing synovial fluid. Not every synovial joint has a bursa, I want to say, but those that do, the point of it is to act to decrease friction during movement. And then you can get really fun things like bursitis, which is what tennis elbow is, when you overuse the elbow joint and it becomes really difficult to use it because it's so sore and stiff and swollen because you have injured that bursa from overuse. Also, bursas can rupture, just like intervertebral discs can as well. And then you have your hip joint. Now, your hip joint is really, really, really held into place. It is very secure. I mean, look at all of the ligaments wrapping around the hip here and here and here. It is hard to dislocate your hip. It's not impossible, We know that from the elderly. It's one of the most common injuries of the elderly. What you need? Yeah. But still a synovial joint still gives us a pretty good range of motion. And so it has all those things. By the way, ligaments, bones to bones, tendons, muscles to bone. Don't be like Miss Millsmore and get those constantly confused the rest of your life. Accessory joint structures, fatty pads, menisci, or meniscus if it's singular, which is a tough fibrocartilage. Bursa, we just talked about, and tendon sheaths holding everything together. The knee being the most commonly dislocated joint, one of the most commonly dislocated joints. Let's just look at the knee structure. So you know what, okay, so you have so many ligaments, ligaments being the thing. Anterior and posterior cruciate ligaments, tibial and fibular collateral ligaments. In fact, I'm pretty sure there's 2 others unless one of those is doubled. And all this going on. There's a lot you can do to the knee. So you have 6 ligaments, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I know they're there if you don't. Holding that joint all together. And that's typically what is injured in sports injuries, is all these ligaments are torn or stretched or rotated, or something horrible happens to them. And as we know, ligaments are made out of cartilage, and cartilage is very, very slow to heal versus bone. And so that's why the knee always gets so many things. I didn't ask you about any of this on your quiz, by the way, just so you know. Here's what it looks like in real life. Just a whole bunch of gristle. Like, have you ever eaten chicken and you got that really, really hard bite of gristle and you have to like spit it out? That's your knee. Your knee is just a gristle. Delicious. And okay, they really want you to know about the knee. Here it is, learn about the knee. Okay, types of synovial joints you have, here we go. Back to this, plain gliding joints. You have hinge joints. You have pivot joints. By the way, this is the only place in the human body this happens, is at the ulna and radius at the wrist, pivoting. That's the only place that happens. You have condyloid joints, which I'm not even really sure. Is that the neck? Whatever. You have saddle joints allowing your thumb to do this and this. And then you have ball and socket joints allowing for the most free range of motion that exists. And here they all are. No, what's a condyloid joint? It's a joint between the radius and scaphoid. So it allows you to do this. Okay, fair enough. You need to know these words. You don't really so much need to know perfect examples of them. The saddle joint is at the thumb though, so you would need to know that. Yeah. And here are body movements, which I'm pretty sure you all already know from before, but they show up both in the video and in your quiz. So let's go through them real quick. Gliding. Gliding. Being able to move your wrist like this. Your wrist bones are gliding over the ulna and the radius head or tail or whatever, and allowing this. We know that flexion is bringing or decreasing an angle. Therefore, extension is increasing an angle. If you extend beyond your range to where it's dangerous for your body, what's that called?
Hyperextension.
Very good, Dunks. I don't know if it's that you're the only one listening or that you're the only one that cares, but hyperextension it is. Abduction is moving away. Oh, you can't see my arms. Is moving away from the body. So increasing an angle this way. Adduction is you're adding it back to the body. So it comes to center. Circumduction is at the very far end. We are able to do this with our hand at the very far end. We can lasso. Yeah, that's circumduction. Rotation, turning a bone along its axis. And then once again, supination. Hands up, begging for soup. Supination. What's the opposite of supination? Max, can you let
Pronation.
Yes, pronation. There it is. So when the hands and the palms are facing backwards, if you were in an anatomical position. I'm not going to show you my feet. Inversion is if you turn the foot inward. Eversion is if you turn the foot outward. Protraction is jutting out of the jaw. You guys are going to have to practice that on your own because I'm not taking off my mask. Retraction is moving the jaw backwards. So protraction, jutting it out. Retraction, moving it back. Elevation is lifting a limb or body superiorly. Depression is putting it down inferiorly. By the way, by the by, wink, wink, and all that. Chewing involves elevation and depression. Because when you open and close your mouth to chew, also don't chew with your mouth open. But when you move your gums to chew, you move them up and down. And then once again, that beautiful opposition, which is this. This only occurs here at the thumb. We can't do opposition with our toes unless you're some sort of circus freak. So if you are, let me know because I'd like to see it. And then there's just pictures of all of them. It's important that you know the differences of these terms because of your quizzy quiz, Quizzington. Oh, well, that was easy. I kind of threw the idea of your, no, not that one, sorry. Stop share again.